Hey everybody, my name is Russ. That is Lauren, and Lauren has a great topic for us today, continuing our What's So Great About series. An album that at least a couple of years ago now, we were at a very barren karaoke night.
Oh, yeah.
Myself, you, our favorite karaoke host, and maybe two or three other singers. And I don't know who, but somebody did a song off of this record. And then all of us were like, wait a minute. We could just rotate through all the hits on that record. And then we kept remembering other songs that were hits, you know. That is Huey Lewis Sports, or Huey Lewis and the News Sports. And this is a record that is, I mean, it's just to steal a line from Wayne's World. Like if you lived in the 80s, it came in the mail with samples of Tide. But we love this series because instead of just going, yeah, everybody knows it's a great album, Lauren's going to tell you what's so great about the album.
Yeah. Well, I mean, first and foremost, like this album, it's weird. It's hard to place it in time, I guess, is the best way I can word that, right? Because it is simultaneously like very, very 80s. Like you could like it because it is it was everywhere, right? But at the same time, it sounds oddly timeless.
Well, first of all, the production is impeccable. Like, I mean, it's in the discussion with some of the greatest produced records of the 80s. Like for me, I mean, Thriller's always in that discussion, but like Brothers in Arms, like that type of thing. I mean, it's just incredibly produced. Second of all, I would argue that there's enough different musical styles on this, and you're gonna cover some of this, so I don't want to skip too far ahead, that you might play one song and somebody goes, oh, that must have came out in the 80s, and then you play another song and they go, oh, I get maybe not. You know what I mean? And I would argue lyrically, the record's timeless too. There's nothing on it where you would go, like even, okay, take a song like We Didn't Start the Fire. That's like laser focused at a certain time. In, you know, there's better examples, but you know what I'm saying.
For sure.
There's nothing on this where you would go, oh, if he wouldn't have done that Gorbachev mention, we wouldn't have known this came out in 84. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do. I'm going to veer off of my planned points here a little bit, but I think part of one of the things I like about it is it is so very 80s, but it stands in contrast to, in my mind, a lot of what would have been going on at the time, because Huey Lewis and the News feel very buttoned up versus, you know, a lot of like the messier, dirtier things. And the production comment is what made my brain go there.
Before Huey Lewis hit, New Wave would have been a big deal, right? And New Wave, I don't want to say it went away, but it kind of went more back down into the underground, right? And Huey Lewis, people were trying so many different things at that time, probably spurred on by Thriller. Like people were just trying different things. And Huey Lewis just came along with a record that was like, but here's straightforward, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's along lines of what you're talking about with it being buttoned up.
For sure. Yeah. And like, this is one of the rare albums that, for me anyway, there's no skips on it. No. There's not a single skip on it. Like every single is a banger, but also then like I made a note here that said non-single tracks like Bad is Bad and Finally Found a Home, like they hold their own in like a really
Bad is Bad. I every time I hear it, I'm convinced this was a single, and then I look it up every time and it was not. Yeah. But I totally agree. This is one of those albums too that when people say, which I'm not in the business anymore of trying to convince people to listen to vinyl, like listen to it or not, I don't care. But when people ask, why do you listen to vinyl? This is one of those albums where I'm like, well, first of all, it sounds amazing. Second of all, you can go straight through it without even considering skipping a song. Like this is an album that digitally I think would suffer because we have the ability to just go, oh, I don't know that one.
Yeah.
Right. But if you give a song a chance, on this record, you're gonna be like, whoa, you know? So
yeah, for sure. And this is a note that I felt like I needed to make because this album was so huge. It was the number 2 album of all of 1984.
Besides,
you know.
Yeah. This is not a video about Thriller, but when you put this on here, the first thing that I thought of is the fact that, and a lot of people don't realize this, that the Van Halen album 1984 never made it to number 1 at all because it sat at number 2 behind Thriller. And Eddie played on both. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you know, the rest of Van Halen had to be like, dude, you know, not that his solo is the reason why Thriller sold that much, but you know what I mean?
Oh, for sure. And like, but that actually,
that's a huge feat for 1984.
A huge feat for 1984.
Off the top of my head, She's So Unusual, Born in the USA, Purple Rain, you know.
And think about how diverse that whole thing was. I was like, this is the number 2 album of 1984 behind Thriller. And this album
Thriller in sports alone. Look at the diversity
I
between
was
those
just
two.
like,
Yeah.
this album could not be any more different than Thriller, but it's also
Yeah.
like they're both amazing.
I think Girl Is Mine is the only track that could be on either record.
That's fair.
Do you know what I mean?
Oh my gosh, you know what? I would like to hear Huey Lewis sing "The Girl Is Mine" with Paul McCartney.
I'd like to hear you really sing it at all.
That's I'd
know.
like to just hear him. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. But
Make it
yeah,
happen.
but yeah, other than that, they're wildly different records.
So different. And like to that point, this album is weirdly universal. Like I could go up to anybody, at almost any age still, and they'll recognize a song off of this. And you know how like there are some artists or some albums or whatever that you can tell like, oh, they're a such and such, you know, like, oh, they're a
Someone walks in the room, a lot of times you can be like, how was the Nirvana concert you went to?
right. But like, what does a Huey
Yeah.
Lewis in the News sports fan even
Well,
look like?
now I would argue you could use that argument. Back in the day, this was a very hooded thing. People didn't talk about this out in the light. If you brought up, I've worked at plenty of record stores, and if you brought this album up in the 90s, people would be like, well, but then they would listen to it in private, right? But nowadays, you could mention it to anyone, and people, and if they haven't heard it, you play a song, they go, Jesus.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, what a great song.
And it's a perfect pop album. And I think to the point that you just said, like, that's probably why people didn't talk about it so much in public. Because like this is not deep art.
No.
This is just a perfect pop album. And I shouldn't have said the word just. This is a perfect pop
Yeah,
album.
no, it's what it sets out to be, which is a lofty goal. A perfect pop album is a lofty goal.
And it absolutely is that. And I'll tell you this, I you know, just kind of marinating in the Huey Lewis of it all. I read the most perfect YouTube comment on one of Huey Lewis's videos. It was a video for I Want a New Drug. And it says, is it just me or has Huey Lewis always been 45?
Yeah, that's true.
And for me, that's always kind of been part of the charm. It's like, oh, Dad put this great album out.
Right. Yeah,
You know,
that's fair.
And it's very comforting to me in that.
No, I
in
get
that
that.
way. I love this
I totally
album
get
so
that.
much.
So we know that everyone likes Huey Lewis in the News Sports because it's this #2 selling record of '84. It lives on. People love it. He still packs out shows. So once again, that is Lauren. My name is Ross. Please drop a comment. Let us know what you think of our thoughts on why Sports is such a great album. What makes it so great? Let us know what you think makes it so great. And as we always say, thank you so much for watching.